And welcome back to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Max Cohen and Yana Shines. The three of us are back together again. It's been a long time. This should be an interesting show. Unfortunately, it's for some not so great reasons, this type of show. We are going to be talking about relegation. It's great to be back together, but we're going to be talking about some very interesting topics. And again, this is going to center around three polls that I've done on the Cottage Talk Twitter page. And the three polls involve Tony Khan, Scott Parker, and Shad Khan. And we'll go through the results of them, and we're going to talk about them. And this should be very interesting because I think that we're going to have some different views on different parts of Fulham. And this could be a long show because we have a lot to cover in this. We're not really going to talk about the match because really right now it's 2 days later. We're going to talk about big picture stuff with Fulham and long-term future of Fulham. That's what we're really going to focus on. But before I do anything else, I got to go right to my co-host, Mr. Cohen. It's been a while. How are you doing?
I've been better, Russ. But I think what's important is, we're all here, we're healthy. Russ, you've recovered from your COVID, which is, I think, the most important thing right now. Is I was worried about you and your family, but glad to be back on the show. Fulham's a mess. We've been a mess for a number of seasons now.
Yep.
It goes to the very top of the club.
That's right.
And it goes to the players, the manager. I don't think anyone can escape blame for this season.
Nope.
I would like to center on the game just for a quick second to say
Go ahead.
I was disgusted by the first half display against Burnley. And I think Parker deserves a lot of blame for that. The way they set out, it doesn't look like they got a team talk that it was a must-win match. It was lackadaisical. It was poor. And the players have let us down the entire season.
Yep.
A lot of the players are not nearly good enough. Okay. A lot of the players have played well beneath their capability. And we know we've not been set up for success. So I was really angry at that first half. And then we play well second half, and it's thinking, why? Why couldn't we start the match like that? But also, I think it was a fitting way to go down because, we were essentially camped outside the Burnley box for 45 minutes. But I never once thought we were going to score a goal. And that just sums up the season. So I can't wait to talk about, Fulham and where we go from here. It's going to be very therapeutic, as I always say.
I think it will be.
Because the fans deserve a lot better. And we're not being treated, I think, like a Premier League club right now. We're a yo-yo club, as Tony Khan has, proudly stated. Yep. And it's simply not good enough. But we're going to talk about a lot of people who deserve to blame. But I don't think anyone escapes blame for this season. Not a single person.
Absolutely not, Max. Everyone has a little piece of the blame pie, as I like to say, and we're going to go through it. But, listen, I'm glad that I let you share your thoughts on the match. It's funny because I think Scott Parker even said that the match basically, I'm paraphrasing, epitomized the season, and I would agree with him on that. But, and again, we'll talk about Scott. We'll talk about a lot of different people. Like you said, a lot of people are part of the blame for the season. But before we do that, Mr. Janaeus, would you like to share your thoughts a little bit on the match, and then we'll get into the larger discussion about what went wrong and what we need to do moving forward, because we're going to talk about some very interesting people during this show, and there are going to be some other names that, again, as I said off air, that don't get talked about a lot that are also part of the problem and that we should be talking about. But first to you, Giannis.
I thought first 15 were okay. And then Burnley really grew into the game and both goals were very frustrating. I know Bobby De Cordova-Reid got a lot of stick for the first goal. He's going at three defenders, but how he loses the ball, but how the ball goes from the edge of the box to all of a sudden a 60, 70-yard pass where we still don't look like we're in much danger, and Vidra making Anderson look really stupid, and then the knockback. It was a goal really out of nothing. And at that point, I thought, oh, Lordy, we're in trouble. And then the second goal, Chris Wood's a super striker, and, no complaints going in 2-0 down in the half, because Dyche and the club have created a very interesting culture there. If you looked at their starting 11, 9 of their players were English. The only 2 non-English were Vidra, the Czech, and of course the Kiwi, Chris Wood. And they spent £1 million this year on a transfer budget. I mean, it's astonishing, especially where they're on the northwest where you got Liverpool and Everton and the United and City, all the big clubs around them. they're on a shoestring budget, and to do what they do to stay in that division, I don't like the way they play, but you've got to commend them. And really, in the first half, they were much better than us. Second half, we gave it everything. We huffed and puffed, but as Max said, we weren't going to score. Not on Mother Sundays. Hit the crossbar, sort of sums up the season. Ruben Loftus-Cheek came on and ran past 10 blades of grass. That summed up his season. And it just was.
Header goes wide from Ruben Loftus-Cheek.
Yeah, in the end, it was a squib, and there was an inevitability about this, which in a way is a relief.
Yes,
because then the post-mortem start, and we get to talk on this show about things we'd like to get done right. Exactly.
And then we can start the process, I guess you could say, of healing. Again, just to talk about it, it's a relief to get over this. Like Max has said, one good thing about doing these shows is that it really gets it off of our chest, and it actually benefits us. And I hope it benefits the fans, because we're going to talk about a lot of different stuff, because there are some challenges ahead for Fulham Football Club. But before we look ahead to the future, we have to look at what went wrong. And there's a lot that went wrong. So I'm going to start here, guys. Like I mentioned, we're going to focus the show a good amount on these 3 polls that I did, and I have the results of them. And, it's funny. I was going to try to play a song for you guys, but I also worry about copyright. So I didn't play this song, but I'm going to say it's a song by my favorite band, Journey. And this is going to start the show. Should Fulham go their separate ways with some key figures with the club? And we're going to talk about Tony. We're going to talk about Scott Parker. We're also going to talk about Shad Khan. Okay, we're going to talk about all 3 because they're all involved in the polls. But let's start again with the most polarizing figure, and that would be Tony Khan. Let's start with Tony. And I know the fans have some obvious views. And listen, I'm going to start us off, guys. And I said this on the last show with Emilio. Do you want Tony Khan gone? And I want him to be gone from the director of football. I'm gonna change it a little bit. I would like him, if he wanted to be involved with Fulham Football Club in some aspects, but being the director of football, I think it's time to go. But here's the rub on this: I don't see him going, and I know that there are people out there that said, "Well, why can't he go? Why can't his father get rid of him?" And I'm going to give you the evidence why I feel that he won't be gone. The Jacksonville Jaguars were the worst team, Giannis, in the NFL, and Max. Worst team. Did he lose his job? He didn't lose his job. And now they got the number 1 draft pick, and they're now on the way up. And Tony's still there, and Tony's still doing the 3 jobs. I don't see him doing the 3 jobs. I will say this about Tony. Again, here in America, in Canada, it's really the GM. That's the job that Tony has. Tony would be fired by now. And again, if it was here, if it was my New England Patriots, my Boston Celtics, he'd be fired by now. Based on the evidence of the job, he'd be fired. But I think this situation is just a little bit different because of him being the son of the owner. I think that's a difference here. I don't see it changing, but he would be fired. And like I said, I'm going to go with the crowd on this and saying, yes, he deserves to go. I said, if Fulham got relegated, he deserves to go. He does deserve to go. That's my opinion on this. The one thing that I will say, and Giannis, I understand where you're going on your tweet. I will say this. You tweeted out that, he hasn't tweeted about Fulham since Liverpool. And this is just my opinion, but I think he finally stopped tweeting because, and again, I have been basically throwing out there that he should stop tweeting about Fulham because, again, just stop it. I told him to get rid of his Twitter account. So I cannot now go and complain about the fact that he hasn't tweeted. I think that he stopped tweeting because, again, every time he tweeted, Giannis, he put his foot in the mouth. And I think for him, he actually stopping tweeting was probably a good thing, but it's a bad look. I understand, but I think it was the right thing because I've been calling for him to do it. That's my only thing I will say on him. I think him not tweeting is a good thing in a way, but I understand the criticism of it. So anyways, those are my thoughts on Tony. And again, I will say right now, I think Tony should step down. That's just my thoughts. I'll go to you first, Max. Your thoughts on Tony, and then I'll go to Giannis.
He should go. He is ridiculously unqualified to be a Premier League director of football. I think it's a disgrace to Fulham fans to see on his Twitter page the wrestling stuff day after day. I agree, Russ. I don't think he should be tweeting about Fulham.
No.
He clearly has no sense on how to engage with the fan base.
Exactly.
Every single time he tweets,
that's why I'm glad
he ends up
stopped.
insulting a lifelong fan.
Yes.
And that's PR 101. Don't insult your own supporters.
Exactly.
And actually, no, I'm happy that he's not tweeting about Fulham because it will just lead to more vitriol. However, the fact that he's continuing to tweet about his other job, and you see these ridiculous pictures of him, Russ and Giannis,
but that's
wearing
why,
these glasses and these costumes, and you're thinking, this is the man who's entrusted with the football club that we love. It's so insulting to every single Fulham supporter.
It's like being Vince McMahon.
But it's even worse than an insult. It's simply bad business.
Yep.
It's simply detrimental to the future of this football club. And 2 relegations from the Premier League under his tenure says it all. It's not working. And as everyone said in the comments and everyone has said in the show, if it was a business, he'd be fired. If it was a American football franchise, he would likely be fired. But the only reason he's there is because Shahid Khan is his father. And, in America, we like to pride ourselves on, we split away from the monarchy. We're supposedly a society that's more of a meritocracy than there are no dukes or lords, etc. But we've created our own monarchy at Fulham Football Club. And Tony's essentially the Prince of Wales right now, and he is completely untouchable. And it's a joke. He shouldn't be at the club. Every single year, we have a rebuild because there's no long-term planning. I was talking to my dad about this the other week, and I was saying, we're in a terrible position because let's say we pull a miracle and go up next season, first time up like we did, the other year. We still need a rebuild. We still need to sign essentially 5 or 6 players, and it's not sustainable. You look at the team that got promoted in 2017-18.
Yep.
That was a band of brothers. You'd see pictures of them out in the town, Fredericks, Target, McDonald, Kearney, Mitro. They were really tight-knit. Yep. There was a spine to that squad. The current Fulham team we're watching is a bunch of low knees and people who just met each other on the first day of training in October, September. Sure. There's no identity. There's no one who's been at this club for a long
cohesion.
time. The people who've been in the club a long time is Tom Kearney, and all he does is sit in the treatment table. Alexander Mitrovic, he sits on the bench, and when he gets on the pitch, he doesn't look interested. There's no player who I think loves Fulham and has that identity to him in this team, and I think that's really why we're struggling. The players don't know each other. There's constantly rebuilding, and apart from the personal animosity which many fans have towards Tony, he's just not doing a good job in building a team that's going to be sustainable. I think the last transfer window was a bit different. He signed Robinson and Tosin and Tete and young players for cheap fees for long deals, but he still neglected the attack in a massive way. You look at our attack, right?
Yep.
It's Mitrovic, it's Decadova-Reid, it's Cavallero, it's Lookman. Where are the goals? There are no goals. How possibly could we have stayed in the Premier League? I mean, Mitrovic got 3 goals. Yep. Decadova-Reid's been our top scorer with 5 goals for 5 months. He hasn't scored a goal in months as far as I can remember, and he's still top scorer. Right. It's just such a dereliction of duty, and you have to think, if he wasn't doing the wrestling, if he wasn't doing the American football, if he was actually in London 24/7, would this have happened? Of course not. If he had experience managing a football club, which he doesn't, would this have happened? Of course not. It's sad to see the club run to the ground like this, and I've never seen the Fulham fan base so united in wanting this man gone. And he should realize that. He should realize that. Listen, I've given it a go. We've got to the promised land twice when I was director of football, and both times we've been relegated. That is a failure. It's a failure. Right. He should leave.
Right. Okay. And like you said, I'm there with you. I'm there with everyone else. I just want to, before I go to Giannis, share the results of my poll. 326 votes, guys. Do you want Tony Khan sacked? 84%. That's obviously a huge majority want him sacked. And listen, I certainly understand it. One other thing that I do want to mention, and again, I do think that Tony does care about Fulham Football Club. I disagree with that feeling by the fans, and I think that comes from the fact that he hasn't tweeted that they feel that he doesn't care. I think he cares. But this goes back to Max, his thoughts again. Listen, he hasn't got it done. He should go, and I'll say it again. He should go. If he wants to have some other role within the club, have someone do the director of football role and also get again, because we're going to talk about that they're going to have a chief scout now and, and again, a director of scouting. And I'm all for that. But again, I think that, he should find some other role within Fulham Football Club. And I'm fine with that, but he should not be the director of football overseeing everything. And getting back to the tweeting, Max, it's funny because, yes, he tweets a lot about wrestling. He also tweets a little bit about the Jaguars. But Have some separate Twitter accounts. Have a Twitter account, Commissioner of AEW. Call it AEW Commissioner. Instead of Tony Khan, change it. Do not tweet about Fulham anymore. Separate it. And then the fans, again, might react differently to your Twitter account. Because, again, I don't think he should tweet at all about Fulham. I don't. But I think he should, if he's going to tweet about AEW, change your Twitter account. Just alter it to be about you being the commissioner of AEW or you're the director of AEW, whatever. But just make it separate. If you decide to tweet, I think that he should get rid of his Twitter account. I'm on record as saying that. I still think he should. But if he's going to tweet about AEW, call it something else along with Tony Khan. Tony Khan, call it, like I said, Tony Khan, commissioner of AEW. Just call it something else. And then people will know that you're not going to be tweeting about Fulham. It's separate. Anyways, Giannis, over to you. I know you have some serious thoughts on this, and I'm going to give you the floor, my friend. Go ahead.
Tony Khan, off he should piss. Since the Monday game, I've done a lot of thinking, and I've watched Scotty Parker's interview several times, and then I've read the program notes from Shahid Khan for the Burnley game.
Yep. And
my mind has slightly shifted. Firstly, if I was Scotty, I'd walk. Because if you look at 2 years ago, we had the same issue with low knees and lack of players at the start of the season.
Right.
And nothing was done about it. We won our playoff series against the Brentford, and we had less time. And he made these excuses about somebody had cholera, somebody had COVID, somebody had hemorrhoids, somebody's head fell off down the M4, whatever the hell he was going on about, and making excuses.
Okay.
And then we all knew that we needed an extra striker for Mitro. The fans, the media, everybody. And in the meantime, we've not had a bloody director of football since September. 8 frickin' months.
Director of scouting, you mean?
Yes. So this is where my thoughts have changed slightly.
And that's an issue, Giannis. I'm glad that you brought up
huge. Oh, it's huge.
Pereira leaving. I'm glad that you brought that up because we're going to talk about the fact that he has left and they did not replace him. And that, to me, is huge.
Yeah. The tone of Shahid Khan's program notes bothered me.
Okay.
There's something that was missing in that. I expected a little bit more consternation. I expected a little bit more fight. So here's where I'm going with this. Every good organization has to have a vision. When Mohammed Al-Fayed took over Fulham, he said, my vision is to return Fulham to the Premier League.
Yes.
First time since the 60s. I'm going to create this fan base. We're going to look after the players. We're going to look after the fans. We're going to bring all the consternation of leaving the Cottage and Fulham Park Rangers. I'm going to bring it back. Everything I do is going to be about the long-term viability of Fulham Football Club to be a club we can be proud of.
Right.
He broke that down into short, medium, and long-term goals. And part of that, of course, the beauty of goals is it's always going to be fluid.
Right.
And it meant changes of managers and personnel and what have you, okay? But, and of course, even now, in 2021, every club is having to change its goals because of COVID. I mean, if Inter Milan can turn around to its players and saying, we're giving you all a 2-month pay cut, even though you've just won Serie A for the first time in 11 years, then you know what we're doing. So as I've been thinking between the games, I suddenly had an aha moment. When I read Shahid's notes, and going back to the start of the season when Tony did the unthinkable and referred to us as a yo-yo club.
Yeah.
It suddenly dawned on me that Shahid Khan doesn't have a vision for this club. He doesn't. Okay. He's the owner, and I'm not talking about building a bloody new stand. That's part of the goals.
I understand that, Giannis, and we're definitely going to talk about Shahid, and it's fair to bring it up now because, again, I don't hear enough talk about the owner. And I'm glad that we're talking about this because, again, it does go to talk about Tony. What is the long-term vision? And I think you nailed it, my friend. There is no long-term. At least I don't see a long-term vision for Fulham Football Club. I don't see it. And I think that's part of the problem. It is a yo-yo club. Why do we have to be a yo-yo club? Why can't we have a Southampton way, a way that Brighton plays? And again, why can't we have a way? We don't have a way. We don't have a long-term direction that includes the academy to, a way through the academy to get to the first team. We don't have it. We have a fantastic academy. And again, the majority of the players don't go anywhere. The exceptions right now are Ryan Sessegnon. That's the exception to the rule. So where is the long-term vision? And I know we're talking about Tony and we're going to talk about Shahid, but fair game right now to talk about it because you talked about the program notes. What is the long-term vision of Fulham Football Club? I don't see it.
No, and you know what? We're not. My dad would turn in he's been gone 5 years. He'd be turning in his grave right now, because we're not a bloody plaything. We're not a Lego. Okay, I've been a supporter for nearly 50 years, and this is, of all the relegations and the stuff we've gone through, there was something about the Burnley game at the end that had an inevitability that I'd never felt before. But mark my words, what Scotty said in the post-game press interviews, I think you really need to listen to it, because what he said is what I'm basically saying. He's saying, I don't see a vision. That when he talks about questions having to be asked and answered, he's talking about vision. Where is this club going? And that is why, if I was Scotty now, he's earned the capital to get another job. He will get another good job. If I were him, I'd walk. I'd get the hell out of there. And before anybody says, oh, we'll get Eddie Howe, who are you going to get to work with this clown? Who are you going to get? Where are you going to get them from? What, the Belarus third division? You're not going to, anybody of anybody that has, that coaching capital and that reputation will not want to work for somebody who's 5,000 miles away, who, I'm sorry, and no insult to the Americans, are part of a North American culture where relegation never happens. You've got franchises like Jacksonville can be 1-15. Nobody cares. But in Europe, and with soccer, in Europe, it is different.
It's absolutely different.
They don't. And so there have to be massive questions asked at the time. Before you think about players and loans, the vision has to be set up. And I think that's on Shade. I think and it filters down to Tony. Why do you think Tony said yo-yo club? You don't think for a moment that Daddy's mentioned that at some point?
Okay. Well, that actually is a great transition. I was going to then go to talk about Scott, but let's talk about Shahid then. Because, again, I did another poll, guys, and this poll is very interesting. Max, I'll go to you. I want to get your thoughts on what Giannis just shared, because, again, we're talking about the lack of a long-term vision. I'm there with him. There is a lack of at least I don't see it. Giannis doesn't see it. I don't know if you see it, because I certainly don't see it. So I'm asking the question to the Fulham supporters, and I put up a poll. Do you want new ownership for Fulham? And, again, I'm not saying that I do, because I actually don't. But I'm challenging Mr. Khan to really assess what's going on at Fulham Football Club and look at all the faults and come up with a long-term vision. It starts with him. It actually does start with him. We could talk about Tony, but ultimately he is the owner of Fulham Football Club. What is his long-term vision for the club? I don't see it. I would love to see a long-term vision of Fulham Football Club. So, again, I'm going to start with you, Max. I want to get your thoughts on what Giannis just shared and just ask the question. I'm going to say right now, I don't want new ownership, but I want him to learn from these mistakes, and I don't want Fulham to be a yo-yo club. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think we need new ownership at all. And I said this last time we did a podcast, but it could really be a lot worse in terms of who's owning our club.
I totally agree.
We've seen the disasters of the fit and proper owner test in the football league.
But we really need him to learn from his mistakes, Max.
I'm curious, what would you consider Shahid Khan's mistake?
I would say that his mistake, and again, I will give him full credit because I've always said that I want an owner to spend money. He spent a lot of money.
He's invested very generously. And I don't think we can just poo-poo the newsstand away as we might want to. Like, that's a big deal for Fulham, in my opinion. And I think that's part of a vision to make us a world-class destination.
Yes.
For fans, tourists, etc., but also players.
That is a long-term.
The Cottage is lovely, but I think it did need a bit of modernization. I think this will look lovely, and I think that's a big step in the future of Fulham. I think that's a vision. I do think that a big fault of Shahid Khan was entrusting his son with director of football. I think that's the biggest, mark against him.
Okay.
The other stuff, though, I think he has learned many lessons. If you look at our first couple of seasons in the Prem under Shahid Khan, it was 3 managers a season. And I'm not the biggest fan of Parker right now, but I think stability served us well this season in some respects. And the fact that not chopping and changing the manager after 3 months at a time is a improvement for him. Now, I think his main role, Shahid Khan, is writing checks. And he's not necessarily so involved in the day-to-day.
No,
That's CEO,
I've said that. I agree
McIntosh,
with
that's Tony Khan. But I don't think that's Shahid Khan's role as an owner. His role is to invest in the club, and he has done that very generously.
And I understand that. And listen, these are fair points, Max. I see where you're going on it because I've said that time and time again that I want him to invest. But when you look at delegating his power, I guess you could say, you can question right now the decision to have his son in charge of as director of football. That is a huge decision. And then you also have to ask when they all get together, because I'm sure that this is a group decision when they decide the vision of Fulham. What is the vision? Is it to be in the Premier League, to be in the top 10? What is the vision? Because I remember when we got promoted a couple seasons ago, it sounded like Shahid wanted us to be not just in the Premier League, but to be a player in the Premier League, to go up against the Liverpools. And if that's his vision, okay, but again, I think that is an extremely long-term goal, but you have to have steps to get to that point. And, and again, I don't see them following a step to a long-term vision involving the academy all the way up. And we'll talk about the academy. Why is the academy such an afterthought? The under-18s are about to potentially win the league again. There's some good players there. Where is their steps to the first team? I think there's another Ryan Sessegnon down there. Are they going to have the opportunity to play with the first team? And these are some of the questions that I ask. And again, I know what you're saying, that his job is to write the checks. He does do that, but I also think overall, the buck stops with him, and that's where I'm going. And like the decisions to put people in charge, that goes to him. Giannis, your thoughts on all of this?
Tony would come third in a 2-horse race. There've been too many mistakes made. And for me, at the end of the day, we don't go to Craven Cottage to admire the linery we love the Cottage because it's the Cottage, but we go to cheer our team on. And this year's been in many ways embarrassing, and it started off at the start of the season because of the team we had out, and we all remember we started with Arsenal, and then Leeds, and then Villa, then Palace. So 6-7 games in, we're struggling with players, and then all of a sudden these loanies come in. You've had 20% of a season. It's not like you didn't know. Your job is, and Russ, you're right. If he was a GM in any franchise, and I live, my local thing is Toronto. The Maple Leafs, the Blue Jays, the Raptors, they'd have his ass fired. So what it comes down to is this is a business. And in business, you have to make the difficult decisions. And the big decision that needs to be made now is that Shahid needs to, if not fire Tony, to stroke his ego, put him in another position within the organization.
That is my suggestion.
Suggestion. He cannot be part of this anymore, because as soon as you said yo-yo club, I thought Norwich.
Yeah, that's the analogy. It would be Norwich. Do you want to be Norwich? I don't want to be Norwich.
Norwich are much better run than we are, to be fair.
No, to be fair, yes.
No, absolutely. I agree. I agree with you saying, but I'm saying
absolutely. But they don't have the history. They don't have the history in the Premier League that we do.
No, okay. Mind you, if you've ever been to Norwich, you can't do anything in there. But how did God manage to put a city in the middle of fuck nowhere? But the thing that I do, Delia Smith's the owner there, but they kept Daniel Farker. Yep. They kept basically the chunk of their squad. They kept Bendia. That was a big one. Yep. Obviously, Temu Pukki. But that also shows you the gulf between the Championship, because you can think Watford have come back up, Bournemouth might do, between the two divisions. It's one thing to say, I want to play in the Premier League, but then how are you going to do it? You need proper scouting, domestic and international, not somebody who's putting on he's at Nacho Libre.
Right.
I mean, really, we want, and we deserve that. And I think that's a lot of the frustration of the fans.
We absolutely deserve that, Giannis. And this goes back to, listen, I truly want Shad Khan to be the owner, and I'll say that again. I think that he should be the owner of Fulham Football Club, but I'm just being honest. We should be asking the question, do you want new ownership? Because, again, of the questions that you're saying, and my poll, and I want to give the results of the poll, do you want new ownership at Fulham Football Club? No is at 80%. So obviously the fans want Shad Khan to be the owner, and I agree with him. We all agree with him. But the reason why I'm bringing up the question, Max, we already talked about Tony. Again, ultimately, the decision, like this delegation, where is the director of scouting? How did they let that go for 8 or 9 months? That falls underneath Shad Khan. He's ultimately, the decision maker on Fulham Football Club. I know what you're saying. He signs the checks. How could he let that one go? That to me is unforgivable to have this since September. That's also part of the story.
Yeah. I think that's also, Alistair McIntosh has to.
We're going to talk about Alistair
some blame.
In just a second.
He doesn't get mentioned enough as
No, we're going to talk Alistair. We're absolutely going to talk about it. Go ahead.
But I think you're talking about scouting, which you guys mentioned was absent since, the fall.
Yes.
That to me speaks volumes to why January was such a missed opportunity. We signed Maja on deadline day. But if you look at what our rivals down, Newcastle got Willock. What a loan signing he's been. West Brom got Yakushlu, got that Dayan from Turkey. These are excellent players. Got a bit of a dog in there.
Yeah, it's my daughter's 8-week-old Basset Hound called Blue. Shut up!
The Basset Hound saying Tony out.
Yeah, he's saying Tony out.
In dog. But yeah, I think January is such a missed opportunity there because
I agree, Max. Great point.
We actually, weren't that badly adrift in January.
Right.
And if we had gotten an extra striker, an attacking midfielder in those matches against Brighton, West Brom to turn 1 point into 3, it's a different story. And we just kind of sat around and got Maja last day of the season.
They tried to get Josh King, but it didn't.
We could have done so much more.
It didn't work.
Could have done so much more in that window.
Yep.
And it seemed very odd that we would, put so much effort into getting players in deadline day back in, October or September, whatever it was.
Right.
I think it was October. But then January comes around when we're actually in the mix and there's seemingly very little action. And I was left wondering why. And I think you guys have a pretty good theory. There's no director of scouting.
It's funny how that slipped my mind when Pereira left. They never replaced him. And you think about it, and like you said, a pivotal time where Fulham can take it to the next level. And, and it was a missed opportunity. Yes, they brought in Maja. Yes, they missed out on Josh King. But what if there was a director of scouting then that found someone earlier in the window that they were able to target and bring in? Who knows? And again, nothing against Josh Maja. And I was for the move, but it was basically, a last minute deal. And they tried to get both. And I give them credit. But again, maybe if there was a director of scouting, he would have found someone else earlier that they could have really targeted. And instead they waited to the very last minute. Or I'm sorry, not that they waited, but they could only really get it at the very last minute. And they just tried everything that they could to get King. It didn't work. And then you look at other clubs and they're making moves and it's working. And, again, like I said, I think Shad Khan, and again, I want him to be owner of Fulham Football Club. I just want him and the people underneath him on the board to really assess and analyze everything that went wrong, learn from your mistakes and fix them. Yes, Max, it's about signing the checks, but it's also making sure that the people underneath you that you're delegating the power know and all are on the same page and you have a vision. I agree with you with the Riverside Stand. That's part of a long-term vision. But where is the vision? Like I said, I remember Shad Khan saying where he wanted Fulham Football Club. But there are so many steps that need to get to that long-term vision of being comfortable in the top 10 in the Premier League. you need to work at that. You need to have everyone on the same page, all going towards that, and you have to have your academies being part of it. And I think the academy is not being used the way that it should be being used. Hugh Jennings has done a tremendous job. Why are we not seeing more players coming through? I'm asking the question. And as we look at the end of these 4 games, I want to see the youngsters play. I want to see Carvalho start. Why not? They have nothing to lose at this point. Anyways, Max, final thoughts on Shad Khan, and then over to you, Giannis, and then we're going to move on to Scott Parker. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I think my position is largely similar. That I think he is a good owner for Fulham. There are mistakes he's made for sure, but to me, he's not the reason we went down. Definitely not the main reason. He probably deserves a little bit of blame, but I think I remember we did a show and we assigned percentages. I'd say it's probably 10% on Shahid Khan, but there are many other figures who I think have a bigger role in the day-to-day operations. And let's not forget the players themselves. I'm sure we'll get to that.
Right.
But
of course.
We had a poor team. The team was poor, very poor.
The team was poor. The players didn't perform, and
that was one of the worst attacks I think I've been Fulham.
I can't remember.
I can remember more anemic.
They've been worse.
Well, I know. I mean, I'm sure. But let's be honest. I think we scored 9 goals at home in the entire season.
9 goals.
I would struggle to think of worse than that in terms of statistics. I'm sure you have better stories.
I'm sure Giannis can do that.
But come on. I mean, Burnley Football Club scored more goals at home at Cottage in 2021 than we did. And they play Turf Moor, if you guys are wondering. They don't. Good point.
All right, Giannis, before I go to you, because, again, we will talk about Scott Parker in just a second. Before we do that, I definitely want to get your final thoughts on ownership, but I just remembered that we have to talk about this gentleman as well. Someone has to explain to me why we don't talk at all about Alistair McIntosh. He's the CEO here. Now, I understand that he's involved with other things, with dealing with Fulham Football Club. I believe the Riverside stand is something that he's highly involved in. But Giannis, he's the CEO. Why aren't we discussing his job?
Well, I think that might come into question because I don't know where I read in the last 48 hours that when a team gets relegated, it doesn't just have an impact on the coach and the players. It has an impact on everybody. Yeah. Now, because of the parachute payments, we're guaranteed that nobody's going to be laid off. None of the backroom staff. Right.
I read that in
Park,
Peter Rutzler,
which is great, but it does have an impact. It's the same way that it lifts an organization and the people in it. Your most important resources are your human when you get promoted, and I'm sure that if they have a post-mortem, which to me, I insist, has to start at the very top, and I'm sure it's probably already started. They've got to look at the roles and responsibilities of each of the the management and where things have gone right. There are going to be some like Hugh Jennings and Steve Wigley who have done you really can't fault them for the work they've done with the kiddies. They've done a super job.
Fantastic.
But it's where the problem has come is really has been with the first team, which of course is the priority. And what has gone wrong? And for that, Shahid Khan is a billionaire, but it's not by accident. He's a businessman and a very good one. And it does reflect on the fact that he's the owner. It's bad business to own something that gains a bad reputation. It's not something you want hanging. So if he has the sort of pride that I'm hoping he's having, he will be stomping his feet and saying, right, I want a post-mortem. We have to get this right because this is absolutely embarrassing. This is unacceptable. Our fans are pissed off. Yeah. Some of the players are pissed off. We've built this spanking new stand, and yet the club feels down figuratively as well as metaphorically. So we have to sort this out. So Ali McIntosh is going to have to be part of that.
I agree.
Heads are going to roll. Heads have to roll.
I'm just saying, listen, Alistair McIntosh has been involved with Fulham Football Club since, I want to say about 2007. I don't have the exact date. He's been with Fulham for a very long time before he was at Manchester City, correct, Giannis? And, and to be honest with you, he's been involved in some very excellent moments with Fulham Football Club. And then obviously he is a part of the relegation and then promotion with the Yo-Yo Club scenario that we're under. He's the CEO. Why are we not talking about him? Max, I'm curious your view on this. Again, I think he gets left out of the conversation a lot, but he's the CEO.
I think a big product of that is Tony Khan is just such a big scapegoat for many people that because he's so public with what he does with his Twitter account and with his statements and with his, interviews with Fulham FC TV, he likes to take credit and he likes to be out in the open. And in my impression, McIntosh is someone who moves behind the scenes in more quiet manners in a way which might escape fan vitriol. But adding up, as we discussed, he probably deserves a lot more blame than people give him. I think it's probably fair to say his role has been reduced since Tony Khan took over in terms of what he does do. And there's no director of football. I assume McIntosh had much more of a say over transfers and hiring, et cetera, and scouting. But now Tony Khan's there. I think he's seen his role reduced. So maybe that's a factor of why. But I do think it deserves to be talked about more. And honestly, I'm not entirely clear on what McIntosh's role is. We hear a lot about how Tony Khan oversees all the transfers, has veto power, both boxes checked, all that. I couldn't necessarily tell you guys right now exactly what McIntosh does. So that's a factor. It's not as public, but he deserves blame, as does, every single one in the higher up position at Fulham.
Okay, excellent stuff there, Max. I muted myself. There's a Goldman. I knew we have one or two during this show. But no, good stuff there, Max. And, again, I wanted to bring up Alistair because not many people talk about him, and I'm thinking, why haven't we talked about him? And I think, Max, you bring up a good point. I think he gets shadowed a little bit because of all the vitriol. And again, I understand it with Tony Khan that you kind of forget that the actual CEO of Fulham Football Club is Alistair McIntosh. And, he really gets deflected from that, but he shouldn't. He's part of this. They're all part of this as we started the show. There's a lot of blame to go around here, guys. Like Max said, that we should be looking at the players as well. But coming up next, we're going to have an in-depth conversation about Scott Parker and his future with Fulham Football Club. Okay, guys, let's get to it. And Giannis, I'm going to start with you because on our last show, it's no secret that Emilio and I said that we want Scott Parker to go. I have more to say on that, but I want to give you your I told you that I would let you share your thoughts on Scott Parker. We just didn't have enough time on the last show, so I want you to start us off. I'll share my thoughts and obviously get Max's thoughts on Scott Parker. I know that you feel that you want Scott Parker to stay. To be honest with you, Giannis, based on what I've been reading from Peter Rutzler, it sounds like he's going to stay, or at least the Cons want him to stay. But like you said, will he stay? That is another question that we'll have to see. But before I read the results of the poll, your thoughts on Scott Parker. Do you want him to stay?
If the post-mortem from the season doesn't bring changes at the top, I think he should go. I think he should walk, because if I was him, I'd be saying this is a total shit show. This is a total shit show. Do I want Scott Parker gone if it's improved? No, I don't. And there's a few reasons. Firstly, the notion that, he's a new manager. Well, he came into a very difficult situation 2 years ago, and we went on a decent little run. Managed to get us up. People say, well, we didn't come up top two. Doesn't matter if you get top 2, 3. We got to a second Wembley final in, 3 years. He's a Fulham player. He's a former Fulham captain. He's a former Fulham coach.
Okay.
He was in the Tottenham ranks and he came back. He was served a really bad hand last season in terms of the signings. And I thought he was really served a bad hand this year as well. Not just in terms of how late players were signed, but also the need for a striker. And we got in Josh Maja. I think he had done enough in the 2 years to earn the coaching and the social capital to keep his job. I happen to like him and just feel that he deserves to work with he doesn't deserve to work with a chimp.
Okay.
He deserves to work with a qualified director of football and have a director of scouting that can support his coaching staff to bring the very best out of the players and have the very best squad available. Now, the flip side is that there are elements of Scotty that do worry me. I still think he's too conservative.
He's way too conservative.
Yeah. He's conservative.
And that really goes to my argument why I want to change. But go ahead, because again, I think this is something that we should talk about. I definitely want Max's thoughts. He's very conservative, and I'm going to put up this graphic that I want to get your thoughts on, Giannis. I understand your view, but this is what concerns me. Okay, and again, Parker plays not to lose instead of playing to win. How often do we see this? He wants to win 1-0. And it's way too conservative, especially if you look at that Burnley match. Why not give it a go, Giannis? He stays to his principles and just plays a conservative style of play. This is the main reason why I want him to go out. I'm done with Parker Ball. So I want to talk a little bit about this, his conservative nature, and just the way that he sets Fulham up.
I think part of it is because he doesn't fancy the players.
Okay.
There's been the battle with Mitro, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about
Mitro. You could talk about, look at Mitro scored 7,000 goals for Serbia, but playing in an international match can be very, very, very different to playing in the Premier League. We can face that. If Tony Khan has been, Tony Khan and Javier Pereira, and we know nobody since September has been doing director scouting, he may well have a squad of players he just doesn't fancy. He doesn't have a say of the signings. He said that, but
do we know that?
Yeah, I don't believe that he does. And he's got a style that he wants, and it's sometimes tough to have faith in the players when you don't think they can do their job. And I think that's been the thing with Mitro. Mitro put weight on. Mitro's attitude slightly changed. And people say, "Well, look what you did."
But did he play to Mitro's strengths, Giannis? Because I don't think he did at all. But
then you can answer, do we have the players to do it? Lookman, to me, has turned out to be, for all his frills and skills, to be a selfish player who couldn't cross.
I agree with that. Properly. I agree with Lookman. I totally agree with you.
Cavallero, people say about Cavallero, but Cavallero can't cross a ball either. I mean, that's what sort of was funny, because Knockaert got sent to Nottingham Forest, and I thought Knockaert was a better crosser of a ball.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
That's not his style. I think a lot of it is he doesn't fancy the players, and I think that he should.
But Giannis, his style is his style, and that again, last season that was his style. Let's be honest, Giannis. We were lucky to get back to the Premier League, and again, what were we talking about? Parker Ball. That has not changed, Giannis. He has learned from his mistakes. I will give him that. I think he's gotten better as a coach, but the way that he set Fulham up. Again, it's funny because I was thinking about this, and I'm going to throw this right back to you. When you look at the Burnley match, I'm going to throw up the Man City match in 2007, The Great Escape. Second half, you're down. What does Fulham do in that match? They take it by the scruff of the neck. They score 3 goals, and they had leaders on the pitch, and they were aggressive in that second half. And it worked, and again, it was – when Roy Hodgson wants to be aggressive, he can be aggressive. I've not seen Scott Parker be aggressive, Giannis. I saw a team that played in the image of their manager that, again, looked like they were too afraid to make a mistake instead of going out to win, to take risks. And, I'm just done with Parker Ball.
I think the difference between Roy Hodgson and Scotty Parker is that Roy Hodgson had faith in his players.
He absolutely had faith.
And
I will say that.
But he did have the players in that squad where he could say, go out and play. Because you look at some of the players that.
So you're putting this back on the players more than Parker.
I'm with Giannis. I had to be with Giannis.
Yeah, I mean, you can't make a chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Okay.
I mean, and you know what? I think he's done enough in 2 years, and I'm not going to be completely free on this.
Okay.
But if you have a director of football scouting come in, a director of football, and you bring some players in, and he's still, because don't forget, Scotty Parker's going to go away from this experience. Nobody's going to be more down in the dumps.
Giannis, you're telling me that Parker got the most out of these players and they were just all crap? Is that what you're telling me? Because
no,
I don't buy that.
No, I'm not. No, not because there were some of the loanies that did do well, but some of these players really, really underperformed. And classic case in point, the first goal against Burnley on Monday night.
Yes.
We've all been lauding Joachim Andersen all year long. You go onto social media, it's like, what was Dekadova doing? What was he doing dribbling at 3 players? From where he lost the ball, how on earth did we concede a goal from there? How did we concede the goal? Because the ball went over to Vidra, and you're thinking it's Vidra against Anderson, the guy we've been lording over, who's had a very good season, and he made him look like a chump. And that really, to me, summed it up. So many of the goals were so simple. People forget that run we went on, away to Leicester, away to Everton, away to Liverpool, the home game against Liverpool, the away against Tottenham, the away against Arsenal. There were a lot of really, really good performances. But we had nobody to score the bloody goals. We had nobody. You had an overweight Serbian who was stropping. Right, frankly, he might as well have been Mario Balotelli.
But Giannis, did he ever have the service? Come on, let's be honest.
That's the players, Ross. You're not listening to Giannis. If you're going to talk about the service, there's not one single elite crosser of the ball in this team. Mitrovic thrives off crosses. I've not seen one high-quality cross in the past 4 months in this Fulham team. You look at the team he started against, Burnley, right? The front four. Cavallero, Decordova-Reid, Lookman, Mitrovic, right? And you might say on paper, Lookman and Mitrovic might be Premier League players. Yes. Cavallero, Decordova-Reid, absolutely not Premier League players.
They are absolutely not. I agree with you on
goals. Mitrovic has 3 goals all season.
But why are they playing, Max? But why are they playing? Because they're in the circle of trust.
Who else is there? It's a joke. It's a joke of an attack. It's a disgrace. There, and the backup striker is Maja, who's barely played in the Premier League until we gave him his Premier League debut. Josh Maja. There's no tools in this team to be an elite attacking force. And I was a Parker supporter. I think what's not talked about enough is what he did with that defense. That's an incredible feat. We were shipping goals for fun in 13-14.
Listen, I agree with that.
The players are terrible in attack. And Parker perhaps might have been too conservative. I agree with you on that. But there's only very little you can do when you're starting Ivan Cavallero in 75% of your matches in the top flight.
Fine, Max.
But his style is his style,
Max. There's a reason why we call Parker ball.
But
Parker ball is going to return. Are you good with Parker ball?
I think Giannis had the most excellent point in the sense that you get a conservative playing system when a manager doesn't back his attacking players, when he knows where the squad's strengths are.
So you're telling me that last season he didn't back his players?
It's different.
Well, I mean, we got promoted. I don't know what you can.
It's different.
No, what I'm saying is that he still played conservative. He still played conservative last season.
We had like 60% average possession last season. It was a very different. I don't think you can compare the tactics when we were one of the better teams in the championship to one of the third worst team in the Prem. We dominated matches. It wasn't easy on the eye, but we got teams worn down and scored late goals due to the possession tactics. Was it the most pretty thing I've ever seen? No, it wasn't. Did it get us promoted? Yes. This season, I think it's different. I think there have been times when we should have taken the match by the scruff of the neck. We should have started Mitra and Maja together. We should have played, I guess, with more urgency on the front foot. But the fact of the matter
is, my point.
I think we had the
Where's the
worst
urgency,
attack.
Max? Where's the urgency?
I just don't think we're the players to do it. Listen, I love Lookman. The guy's no final product. I love Decordova-Reid. He's not a Premier League player.
I think that you should be putting blame on the players. I agree with all this.
Mitrovic looked like a shadow of his former self. And let's be clear, the guy had COVID. Everyone knows what COVID can do to a professional athlete. Also, he was seen out partying. Giannis said he was overweight. I don't know if that's true, but he clearly wasn't the same Mitrovic we've come to love. A lot of players were not on their game. And when you really only have one recognized striker for the first half of the season, and Parker was forced to play Cavallero as a false 9, he doesn't have the tools to play in an attacking manner. Also, I think we need to remember this. There's no creative midfielder. There's no one picking the passes. Loftus-Cheek.
Well, they missed Tom Kearney. We'll be the first to admit they missed Kearney. Okay?
But we had Kearney for the first half of the season. I'm not going to go completely on that style. Kearney is decent. He's not the guy who would have kept us up. We didn't have a true number 10. We still don't have that. He wasn't given the tools to succeed. Come on, let's be honest.
And you know what?
Parker wasn't amazing, but the players let him down, and I'd say let him down in an attacking sense to a huge extent.
So 9 goals at home is all on the players and nothing to do with Parker. Come on. Max, come on.
Russ, I think you should share the blame, but I think there's a big reason is that we didn't really have a goal scorer. And when you have a top scorer with 5 goals, that's only so much you can blame on the manager. We don't have goal scorers.
Right.
Russ, if you look at
go ahead, Giannis.
You look at several weeks ago we were looking at Shitcastle and thinking, right, we're going to catch them up. But guess what?
Yeah.
Callum Wilson.
And Almiron and San Maximin. I mean, they have class. Joe Willock. Their squad is legitimately better than us. Joe Linton has scored more goals than Mitrovic. I'm not sure. He scored 3. Joe Linton's a joke.
I'm gonna mention this comment, and David actually put some stats on the Cottage Talk Facebook page. I'll just mention this one. he's Kit Simons in a fancy coat. The one comment on that's actually a good one, David. Is
Kit
this
Simmons got us promoted? I must have missed that one.
He is great with sound bites. He's great with the media. And I think that, again, that clouds our minds, is that he's so good talking to the media that I think we give him a little bit of the media don't push him, guys. And I think you're going to agree with me on that. The media give him a free pass, except for Peter Rutzler, who really keeps him accountable. The media itself's like, so how you feeling, Scotty? How you feeling? How you doing after that match, Scott? Come on, ask him the tough questions like this one. Why didn't you approach it the way that you did in the second half and the first half? That's what I would have asked Parker.
But Ross, I think the key thing is we approach it that way in the second half, and I was happy. We were all happy.
But it was reactive,
we
Max.
Were never going to score a goal. There are no goal scorers in this team. We could have started the match that way, wouldn't have scored a goal. You have to understand there's a severe lack of quality. And it's very similar to what happened in 2018-19 when we were playing Tim Ream, Dennis Adoy, Joe Bryan, Cyrus Christie across that back four. We realized then that those players don't have what it takes to play in the Premier League week in, week out. And the same can be said for Cavallero, for Decadova-Reid, for Loftus-Cheek, for Mitrovic, for Maja, for Lookman. All those attacking players I mentioned are not of the top quality to succeed in the best domestic league in the world and score goals against great defenses. The Premier League is great defenses. They can't unlock those defenses. Just the same thing as Cyrus Christie couldn't manage a top-class winger. They can't do it. And at some point, a manager can only do so much when given players who aren't, I mean, let's be clear, Decadova-Reid, Cavallero, they weren't even nailed on starters in the championship last season.
No, they were not.
And now they're asked to shoulder the entire burden of keeping a team in the Prem. That is not on the manager. That's on Tony Khan. That's perhaps on McIntosh, Akon, etc. But you can blame Parker for some things. You cannot blame him, I think, for the lack of goal scorers.
But you can blame him for his decisions on who he starts, because he has this, I'll call it his circle of trust, Max.
Wait, Ross, let me ask you this. Let's say you're the manager, right, for a must-win match. Who do you start in this Fulham team that would give you that kind of urgency or front foot? Like, I just don't know who it is that gives us different results than what we got.
Well, I'd be playing Adam Lookman, and I know what you're saying. He is more of a player that is not as much of a team player. I will go there with you. I wouldn't be starting Cavallero as much as he's starting Cavallero. Cavallero seems to start almost every match, and I think that's insanity, okay?
But who do you put in? Like, it's not like Cavallero starting over Lookman. They're playing together.
I understand that.
But you look at the bench, Russ.
Yeah,
Who's the bench against Burnley? We had Maja, we had Loftus-Cheek, and we had Carvalho. In the attacking sense, you can maybe say Alba.
Right.
Come on. No, it's a bad team.
Well, it is a bad team.
It's a very, very good championship.
It is a bad team.
It's not a Premier League.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I do want to mention the poll, and this is on the Cottage Talk Twitter page. And again, do you want Scott Parker sacked? And guys, I had 289 votes. No was at 64%, and yes was at 36%. So the majority of the fans agree with you guys. This is just how I feel. I think I've had enough. I want to clean house. That's where I'm going, Max. I want them to clean house. I want them to start over. I want a new manager. I want a new director of football. I want a new vision. And I just see with Scott Parker, and again, we're going to go back to the championship and we're going to dominate the ball like you guys are talking about. But again, it's going to be back to Parker ball. And, and I guess I'm done with Parker ball. But to your point, Max, you are right. You do have to put a good portion of the blame on the players. But guys, let's switch and talk about a little situation off of this, because again, Peter Rutzler mentioned this in his very interesting article on The Athletic. I would highly recommend you guys reading this. If you're watching, if you haven't read it, please read Peter, because this to me is something very interesting that we need to talk about now. So basically, Peter put in his article that if Parker stays, likely Mitro will go, okay? And I want to mention this because, again, I listened to the Fofcast a great deal. They were the first ones that I can remember bringing up, and I want to give credit to Jerry Pym, and then, of course, Mike Gregg, Scott Tanfield, and Owen Smith. Mike actually did a poll, but Jerry brought up the topic. If Parker stays, Mitro might go. That was basically the topic. So I'm going to go to you, Max. Which one would you rather have, Mitro or Parker?
It's a good question. I've been thinking about it a bunch. The Mitrovic we saw this season was not his best. was not even close to his best. I'd say he was probably at 35%. Yes, he wasn't given a lot of game time, but when he wasn't excellent. That being said, it is a Premier League. He will be much better in the Championship. And I don't know. The question is, can we count on Mitrovic to play the way he did in 2019-20 when he got, 25 goals? I don't know if he has that. Also, let's say that Mitrovic stays. We get a new manager. I'm not so sure if Mitrovic is going to be motivated. Yes, there might be a new manager in here, but he might say, this club disrespected me. This club, I gave everything to this club. And when we finally get to the top flight, the manager benches me. The higher-ups maybe don't back me as much. I'm not so sure a change of manager would solve Mitrovic's attitude problems. For that reason,
so then you would stick with Parker, because obviously you want to stick with Parker anyways.
I think that we need perhaps more mobile striker, a striker who can play in the Premier League.
But he's a proven striker in the Championship, Max. We know this.
He's aging, and I think his attitude has completely nosedived. I love Alexander Mitrovic, I really do. But what we saw from this season, I think, was the beginning of the end. And we might have to move on.
I disagree.
That's okay. That's okay. I mean, it's a
I disagree. And this is a striker that got us up from the Championship. Let's remember this.
No,
and he scored goals on a terrible team in the Premier League. Yes, he did not play well.
He scored 3 goals.
He
scored 2 goals against Leeds, and then what? What was the other one? He scored 1 goal recently against Villa after Ming's mistake.
Okay, but we know
3 goals.
History says he is a beast in the Championship. I want Mitro. If I'm choosing Mitro. Over to you, Giannis. Your thoughts. If you had to choose, Parker or Mitro?
Parker.
Interesting. Really?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you would take the money. Then you would go down the route. You take the money and you invest in a different striker.
Yeah, because I want players that want to play. I want players that want to be there.
Are you convinced that he doesn't want to play?
I think I think his attitude changed. His attitude changed, and to me, I think.
But do you think this has to do with Parker, or do you just think it has to do with the situation of his season? Why do you think he has changed?
I think it could be a number of factors. I mean, there might be, as Max said, there was the COVID thing. There might be issues at home. I think if it's a relationship piece between Parker and Mitro, I think it's something where, there's no such thing as an irretrievable or irreconcilable relationship, where Scotty might sit down with Mitro and say, look, this wasn't the best year. I think we've both made mistakes. The optics aren't great. Why don't we do a reset? And if Mitro's up for that, because he's going to make the Serbian national team, he's only 26, doesn't really matter. He'll score goals for fun. It might come to an arrangement where, you know what, he could turn and say, okay, yeah, let's reset it. But then Mitro might say, look, I want someone to play up front with. I want better wingers. Tony Khan spent 11 million on Cavallero, 15 million on Knockout, 30 million on Seri, 25 million on Anguissa. All those 4 signings are enough for some decent corporal punishment. Absolutely ridiculous. And had the signings gone right, we wouldn't be in the situation where we're getting lonely Tony Zoni, where we've got Joachim Anderson, who we take on a loan without an option to buy, and then Tony, after saying that we're a yo-yo club, go, oh yeah, but I'm not in the business of developing other people's players. When we're talking about Sessegnon, but then you pick up Loftus-Cheek, who turns out to be as mobile as
you and I talked about this. You and I talked about the loan situation, Giannis. We talked about this. Yes, I get that.
It's not I don't think it's irreconcilable. I would, if you're putting a gun on my head, I would say Parker, because if the changes at the top are done properly. But if the changes are done properly at the top, we'll have a director of scouting, we'll have a new director of football, and that can build upon the vision where Scotty, as a young coach, look, if he's being talked about as a potential Tottenham manager, there are clubs where they'll go, oh, you know what?
I understand, Giannis, but a leopard doesn't change his spots. This is who he is. He's conservative in nature. That's not going to change, Giannis.
I think it will, because he's a young coach. Okay. I think Mourinho, and people don't. Wait a minute. People don't. If we talk about Parker Ball and complain about Parker Ball,
right?
Tell me how Palace are any different.
Much better players.
Well, they have better players, but I will say this, and you will agree with me, Giannis. With Roy's time at Fulham, there were times where he was very conservative on the road, but when he was at Craven Cottage, Fulham played on the front foot against the big teams. They did.
He's good, but his teams, despite all the talent they've got, They've become boring. Mourinho. How did Mourinho build his reputation?
Defensively. I agree with that. Listen,
but he
Giannis.
changed, but he evolved. Like good coaches do evolve, and I think that Parker is going to have to do probably as a mentor, self-reflect into the season. What did you do well? What sucked? What next?
Okay. Let me ask the Fulham supporters this again. If you're watching live, I'm asking all of you the question. Please just feel free to share your thoughts. Parker or Mitro, if you had to choose, and I will share the comments if you guys send Parker or Mitro. As we're talking about Parker, guys, and this is something I was talking to another Fulham supporter today. When you look at his coaching staff, yes, there's Stuart Gray there, Giannis, and Max, when we're talking about him, but does he have someone that has different ideas than him? Meaning that Matt Wells is coming from the same system. Does he need someone else, like you would say, Giannis, as a mentor? Does he need someone like Roy as a different style? And again, I can't stand Steve Bruce. What I'm about to say, I want to give Newcastle some credit here. They brought in a new coach to help out Steve Bruce in mid-season. They changed their style. Does Parker need someone to have a dissenting voice to say, hey, listen, look at it this way? Is he missing that voice to tell him to bounce ideas off of? Nothing against Matt Wells, but I have a feeling, and again, we don't know this, that they're coming from the same system. Does he need someone from outside to give him some advice, Giannis? And then I'll go to you, Max. Does he need another coach or an advisor?
I think you're onto something there, but I think if he's going to get another coach into the staff or an advisor, it needs to be somebody a lot more experienced. I think that's, you need that critical colleague that says, Scotty, and I think that's part of good development as a coach, is that, having somebody who comes out and uses, and I will tell you, and I will, the importance of, that I value is in my second year as a head coach, as a coach. An Englishman, George, he coached the boys a year older, came to watch one of my games, and at the end of the game, he came over from the supporter stand, and he said, "Let's go for a coffee."
Right.
For coffee, and he said, first thing he said to me is, "What the F are you doing?" I said, "What?" He said, you look and appear like a coach that's standing at the terraces at Craven Cottage. You need to change the way you look at things. You need to change the way you look at formations. You need to change your approach to game management. You need to look at the certain plays. You need to establish a style but you have to be fluid enough to recognize when things go wrong. Coaching is an evolving and revolving door, and you have to be prepared for that. Now, that was year 2 of 27. And George I never forgot that. And he became, for a number of years till he passed away, my critical friend. Right. And that's probably what Scotty needs. If Scotty, somebody will say, come on.
Right. And, that's why I want to bring this up. And I see Ben's comments. I'm going to share Ben's comment because, again, I know Stuart Gray's past. He managed both Southampton and Sheffield Wednesday, and I think he's been a great coach. But the reason why I'm saying a different voice is that he's been with Parker for a while, Max. Does he need someone from the outside that's a different voice to bounce ideas off of your thoughts? Because you want Parker, should he bring in another coach or an advisor to help him like Steve Bruce did?
Sure. I mean, the more people in that, managing staff who have more experience, the better. I think it's odd. Normally when you have a new manager, people might associate that with, naivety, too open, too attacking. But, with Parker, it's the opposite. People criticize him for being too conservative. I think he's a young manager and he will evolve. We're buying into Parker. You guys want to talk about a long-term vision. Yep. I think the vision here is you trust Scott Parker to lead this team to success. That's what Shahid Khan has done. I hated the way we operated for the past couple of years when a manager would be sacked in a matter of 4 or 5 months, and it just left me
2.5 years, Max. But this is a good amount of time. This is a good sample size we have now. This isn't like chopping and changing. We have some time now. I just would like to stick with him. Give him that year in the championship, and if it's not working out, fine, you can sack him. But I really think if you want to be a sustainable club, I think sticking with a manager is the way to go, and that's what
attracts a core group of players who know the manager, who back his style. I think the style needs changes. I think the substitutions need changes. It's clear he's waited too long at the matches to make subs. As you said, reactive, not proactive. Yep. I don't love the starting 11 sometimes. He's not the perfect manager. He's not. But to be fair, I don't know what other manager would come in under Tony Khan.
Proactive, Max? Do you think all of a sudden he's going to change and wow, now I'm going to be more proactive? I would like to think so. Like
I don't see Scott Parker as stubborn as a manager as some make him out to be. If you look what happened of just the course of this season, he changed from being perhaps a 4-3-3 to doing that back five to then going with that back four. I think he's a manager
but it still had those conservative principles. Those conservative principles are still there.
I think it shows he's open to change. And again, he's learning his craft. Yes, he's not the most experienced, but I do think with time he will get better.
Okay. All right, guys. I'm going to share some comments, and if you're watching live, feel free to continue to share some comments because I'm asking you guys, if you had to choose, is it Mitro or is it Parker? Feel free to keep them coming because I have a few of them, so I just wanted to see if I can catch up to them. Of course, now I can't find them, guys. Of course, I go through this. Now I can't find the comments. Fantastic. Let's see. Let's start here. Parker, we can get a good 20 mil for Mitrovic. This could be a good investment. Okay. Let's see. Let's see what else we have. I had a bunch of them. Now I can't find them. Great. Oh, here we go. Our friend James Dowden, Mitro 100%. Constantino says Mitro. David Zodiac says Mitro any day of the week. And I understand that. Let's see. Here's one. And again, this is where I'm going, guys. Mitro in the championship is on fire. But Max, do you think he's going to be different now because he's older?
So people have pointed out he's 26. That's a fair point. I wasn't trying to say he's like over the moon, but I think what Giannis brought up was key. He's not the slim, imposing striker he was. I think he looks slow. I think he looks unmotivated. And I just don't think there's a guarantee that once, even if we change managers, he's going to be 100% Fulham. I think he'll leave this summer.
Okay. All right. I'm going to share a couple more comments. Mitro, Parker will get us back up with or without Mitro. Okay, so that's an interesting one. I'm going to share this one. Parker's really a student. We need a teacher. We've had many in the past. Why not now? Parker was a newbie. Okay, so those are some of the comments, guys. So very, very interesting stuff. And guys, this is how I want to finish up the show. I really enjoyed this. Let's continue the discussion about Parker in this way. Okay, and Giannis, I'll go to you because again, I wanted to end really focusing on Scott Parker. And I remember Scott Parker as a player, and I heard whispers on this. And I'm hearing whispers again. I've had people whisper to me that Scott Parker basically, if you're in with him, you're in. I'm talking about a player. It's basically, I'm going to call it Scott Parker's circle of trust. If you get outside that circle of trust, you're not playing. And you have to be in that circle. So what concerns me, Giannis, is that this circle, which I truly believe includes some of the players that you guys really don't like Bobby Decatover-Reed.
Oh, I like him. Oh, no.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No. I'm
sorry.
a big fan of his. No.
I'm sorry. You are. Sorry. Or might not
sorry,
be Premier League quality. I happen to like Bobby Decatover-Reed, but obviously Cavallero is part of that circle of trust. And he has a circle of trust that he trusts. But it does feel like to me, if you're not in that circle of trust, you might not play. I think Mitro's outside of the circle of trust. So over to you, Max. What are your thoughts about this? Because again, I've heard whispers that there is this circle here, the players that, again, that he's for, and then there are players that might have been shipped out because potentially didn't fit into what Parker wanted to do. So your thoughts of having
come on, Russ. Every single manager has players he trusts and player he doesn't trust. You.
Okay.
Are you trying to make this out just to be a Scott Parker thing? I mean, I remember Slavisa Jokanovic would purposely bench players because he thought they were Tony Khan players.
Okay. Fair point. So you still see him, and I'll ask you this: do you see him as a unifier, building a team, or like I said, a small circle being a divider? Do you see him as a unifier? Because this team didn't play as a team.
Okay, Russ, let's just be very clear. let's think back to the podcast we did after the Liverpool away match on the 6th or 7th of March. Okay, that's what, 2 months ago. Were you saying Scott Parker was a divider? We were saying Scott Parker we were saying that team fought like warriors. That team sacrificed for the manager.
We did.
I know the season changes, and I know moods as fans can switch very quickly, but I don't want to get into this narrative that Scott Parker is some kind of evil figure who's casting players aside.
I'm not saying that he is.
I think he's actually a very effective man motivator.
Okay.
I think he got a lot out of this team. If you look at the battling performances, I mean, even the Arsenal match, we were so close. The Leicester City away match, Everton match, he is capable, I think, of unifying the team. But yes, he's had drawbacks, and I'm not going to say Scott Parker is perfect, but I don't like where this is going when you're saying that he cast players away, because we were on the same podcast 2 months ago saying what a great performance, and they fought for Scott Parker.
We did. Fair point there, Max. We did say that, but evidence then shifts to 1 point since then, since that Liverpool match, 1 point. So you have to ask yourself, and I'm just asking the question, is there a unified team there, or does it go back to what you said? The players just not good enough. That it's more to do with the players than Parker. So you don't think? Yeah,
I think there was obviously a massive drop off after Liverpool. Could not agree more, and it was not good enough from Parker and the players. Right. I wouldn't put that down to him being the divider. I'd put that down to again squad not being good enough, fatigue, lack of mentality, final 10 minutes, all these things. David Zodiac has a good question, which I want to address in the comments. He said, the question for the Parker in crowd: how many matches do you give Parker next season if we're struggling? It's a good question. I would say give it to the halfway point of the season. If it's a festive period and let's say we're in a relegation fight, of course, sack him. But I think if we're in the playoffs or in and about that discussion, I'd say give it to Parker until the end of the season, because we know how quickly things can change in the championship. But yeah, of course, if you start off next season like Magat did in 2014-15, by all means, give him the sack. But personally, I don't see that happening. But if it does, I'd be the first to say it's not working, get him out. But give it to the festive period at least.
Okay. Giannis, over to you, and again, I was just thinking about this, and I was just thinking that again, he has his loyal core group of players, and that, but Max brings up a good point. Is any manager any different, that they have their favorites, I guess you could say, and then if you're not, you could be on the out. So I see where Max is going on that. But thoughts on is he a unifier or a divider? And then also this question from David, how long would you give it?
Well, I think he's a unifier. I mean, we went on that run, and you could see they were running their tails off. And even in the second half against Burnley on Monday, I mean, you could say they were the boys were giving it everything they had, and it came up short. Every coach has had their little favourites, but again, I'd look to if you put Max said it earlier about our bench against Burnley, we had Ethel on the bench. What the hell have you? We had. I mean, the players that we shipped off. Cabana was a little bit of a question mark, but my understanding was he wanted to get playing time. I'm good with that. Kamara is a lunatic. Who was a lunatic? I mean, we can all agree on this. And he got himself sent off second game.
He's coming back.
Yeah, well, and hopefully we ship him off. Okay. Knockhart. I didn't think Knockhart offensively did little last year, but I thought he did actually decent as a wing back in terms of defensive. I thought he improved. But again, who made those decisions? You kept looking. It wasn't just week after week. You looked at the bench and went, "Oh shit, we've got no strikers." And teams sussed it out because they thought, well, Fulham could score a goal, but are they going to score two? Yeah. And and I think what typified that was the Arsenal one, the Arsenal game. I thought we looked very comfortable, but then there's 7 minutes of it, and you thought, oh, we're never going to get a second goal on this. We're not going to. We know what's good. We know the script, before it's been written. And there were so many. I mean, you got to remember, we were in so many situations where it got blown. I mean, the Arsenal last minute, the Wolves draw. We're up against Villa. It's not like we weren't in situations to catch up. We were close enough. But as I said, I think Scotty's built the capital, but the changes have to think above. I think that, honestly, if the best person I could put on the right wing is Cavallero as a coach, I'm going, oh shit.
Okay.
Do.
No,
we really do.
That's
and it's lack of quality.
And Max said that too. Max said that too. It's a fair it's a fair criticism that goes back to Tony. That's why there's a lot of blame to go around. So great stuff, guys. But we do have to wrap this up. We've gone a very long time. I want to thank Giannis and Max for doing this show with me. Before we go, I have to ask Max one question. Do you feel better now that we've done this show, Max?
I do. I think another thing, I want to give a shout out to all the fans in the comments. We've had just a tremendous comments, and people have been sharing their opinions, and we've been sharing ours. But even though we're not agreeing on everything, I'm just glad we have this Fulham community to be here. And as we'll say, we'll be here in the championship next season. We're not going anywhere.
Nope.
This team isn't going anywhere, and there'll be more shows to come, which is the good news. And hopefully we'll win more games than we lose next season.
Yep. Well, listen, I have missed doing the show with you and Giannis, and it's been wonderful doing it with the two of you. Giannis, your thoughts on the show? Do you feel better doing it?
Yeah, and you know what? Even after Monday night's game, I mean, whether you were upset, angry, sad, felt betrayed, pissed off, effed off, everybody, every Fulham fan would have felt some sort of emotion, and it wasn't positive.
Yep.
So the good thing about doing a show like this is that it can bring some closure, and it brings some therapy as well. And I think we're all in agreement that decisions need to be made.
Yep.
I mean, we can differ as to who Tony Khan should be kicked into the River Thames, but we know the decisions need to be made.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's exciting in a way because we're sort of, this is the week the championship squads are releasing the squads.
Yep.
The players who aren't going to make it for next year.
Right.
So we've got 3 games to come.
Yep.
And we've got Southampton Saturday. That should be fun. But we've got 3 games to come. Yep. Decisions are already been made, and if good things happen, then next year we'll be ready, and it'll be a good thing. And I'm just hoping that I'm really hoping, I'm praying that Scotty on Saturday, I don't know, put this in Facebook, unless you've got an inside track on a permanent deal, an acquisition, I'm really hoping that he gives some time. Yes to the Reams, yes to the Hectors, yes to the Adoys who've sat on the bench all season. Give them a couple of games at the end of the year. It doesn't mean anything. Just let them play.
Okay.
That's
good
what I
stuff. Want. Good stuff, yes. My final thoughts, and again, we're talking about doing the show. And what's interesting about this is that we do Cottage Talk, and there are some other really great outlets for podcasts, Fulhamish, Fulham Focus, the Fofcast. There's some great shows out there. And I think we're all needed, and we all do it a little bit differently, and I think we all benefit from it. The reason I'm saying this is because when I started Cottage Talk, there was barely any talk on Fulham. If it was in the media on Sky Sports, it was very little. Nothing has really changed, guys. The talk on Fulham is usually, very controversial. It tends to be more negative. It doesn't seem to be more like with the critical analysis that us and the other podcasts do. We really dive deep into it. We all benefit from all of these podcasts. So if you're listening to Cottage Talk, I highly recommend you also watching or listening, whether they're actually, in the case of all these shows, Fulhamish does do a YouTube video, so I would highly recommend watching it and listening to their show. And then, like I mentioned, Fulham Focus, and of course the Fofcast with our friends at the Fofcast. Check them out, because if you're looking at through the media, you're not going to get what you want. We're going to give it to you. The podcast that cover Fulham Football Club. That's how I want to end the show. Anyways, let's wrap this up. For Giannis Shanaeus and Max Cohen, I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk.